Richard Donner's Superman marked a milestone in the evolution of comic book related entertainment. Released in 1978, it represents a landmark for the medium, being the first true mainstream superhero movie to hit the silver screen in a big way. Aside from the Adam West Batman movie in 1966, Superman the movie was unequivocally the first of its kind, a feature-length superhero film that took itself seriously and proved to critics and audiences alike that superhero movies could indeed be great films. This film represents a seismic change for the medium, as from this moment on, superhero movies were no longer geared primarily for comedy. Superman showed us that comic book source material could be taken seriously when translated into a great piece of genre cinema. What Superman did that was so unprecedented was that it took its time to tell the story of Clark Kent first. It chronicled his backstory, set up the world, and introduced us to the characters long before transitioning to the action-packed set pieces which come much later. Because of this, we as an audience are able to get a grasp of the story, we feel like we're a part of this world, and as a result we're side by side with Clark on his journey as he comes to embrace his destiny and become the hero he was born to be, Superman. So here we are guys, the newest installment in my new series of Deconstructing a Classic. It is of course Superman the movie. If you'll have watched my first episode in this series, you'll have seen me talk about Alien before Alien Covenant came out. I had a lot of fun talking about the kind of classic original Alien. Not one of my favourite movies of all time, but I still think it's a great film, and probably my favourite Alien film as well. But in this episode I thought I would talk about the original classic 1978 Superman film directed by Richard Donner, which of course came out in 1978, just a year before Alien actually, and I thought now would be a perfect opportunity to look closer at Superman because Wonder Woman's coming out, the newest DC movie, and you think Superman, Wonder Woman, they're not really the same, but funnily enough, the director of Wonder Woman, Patty Jenkins, has cited several times that the 1978 original Superman movie was a real big influence on her and a big inspiration for Wonder Woman. So I thought that's actually worked out perfectly to talk about the original Superman just in time for Wonder Woman coming out. Of course, Wonder Woman is coming out this week. Cannot wait to see it. I've heard really good things and I'm really looking forward to checking it out. But let's just get straight into this now with my Deconstructing a Classic of Superman the movie. Now before I go into my kind of scene by scene in-depth breakdown of the film in an attempt to kind of deconstruct what I think makes this film so great, I first have to start off by saying that I absolutely love the original 1978 Superman. I think it is one of the best superhero movies ever made. I put it in the top 5. I don't have a lot of kind of older superhero movies in my, top 10 or top 20 best comic book movies, but Superman the movie would definitely be up there because not only was it really the first of its kind, but it was just such a great superhero movie. Like it was, for me, it's really the definition of a superhero movie. I think Superman the movie, it really is to the kind of archetypal definitive superhero movie and probably the best Superman film we've ever had. And I absolutely love Man of Steel. I'm not going to be comparing the two that much in this, but I will be bringing it up at some points. But I love Man of Steel. I love Man of Steel for what it was, a kind of a modern, a kind of a representation of the character and what it would be like if Superman was a real person in the real world today. But I also love the original Superman movie. As I said, it's like the quintessential archetypal superhero movie. It really feels like a classic superhero film when you're watching it, and I just absolutely love it. So let's just not waste any more time and get straight into this. And of course, right from the get-go, we get the really great title sequence in space, accompanied by the classic, iconic John Williams score. Of course, I've got to mention the John Williams score right at the top here. John Williams has kind of composed some of the greatest, most iconic scores of all time, whether it's kind of Indiana Jones, Star Wars, Jurassic Park, even the Harry Potter theme. He's composed some of the most iconic movie themes of all time, but my favourite of this, I think it has to be Superman. I absolutely love the classic Superman theme, and although I love the Hans Zimmer score in Man of Steel, and I think the music in Man of Steel was really great, for me, the iconic Superman theme from the original, composed by John Williams, it's just absolutely unbeatable. I think it's one of the most iconic, if not the most iconic, superhero movie theme ever composed. I think it's just so fantastic. I absolutely love it. And of course we get this title sequence accompanied with the iconic music. It is a bit of a long title sequence, and obviously, you know, a lot of the films back in like the 60s, 70s had these kind of long extended title sequences, but I love the title sequence. I think it's really cool. And of course we get introduced right off the bat there to Krypton. We first see the giant red sun of Krypton. I really like that. It's more kind of in line with the comics. Raoul, I think the sun's called. I think it's something like that. But you see the giant red sun there, and then we get into Krypton. We get our first look of Krypton here. This kind of crystalline, ice-like planet. Very different from how Krypton was depicted in the comics, I believe. But I think it's a real iconic, memorable kind of depiction of Krypton. Yes, it's different from the comics, but I like the fact that they tried to do something different. And I love the look of Krypton. It's not just like, because, you know, we've seen a lot of big sci-fi movies, a lot of alien planets where they all kind of look the same. They're all going for the kind of the same kind of thing, highly technological, futuristic, or what have you. But with Krypton, it's very different. It's crystalline, ice-like planet with these crystals, and it's kind of it's got a really cool, unique look to it. And that's what I love about it. You know, it may be different from the comics. It may not be like what a lot of people think Krypton should be like, but I just like the fact that it does look very different. And when you see Krypton in this film, you immediately kind of know what it is and what movie it is, and it's really an epic introduction to Krypton. Of course, we get kind of the John Williams music, just the rousing, building score there from John Williams, which is so great. It's a real kind of epic opening, almost kind of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, maybe. The visuals, of course, as well, we're seeing Krypton there. And right off the bat here, we get introduced to Marlon Brando as Jor-El, and it's just so cool that they were able to get Marlon Brando on board to play Jor-El. It was so great in that role. A real iconic performance from him there. You know, he doesn't have a massive role in this film, but he really does a great job. And also, Terence Stamp as General Zod, equally as iconic, and you know he's kind of instantly iconic in just his one scene he has in this movie. Obviously he comes back in the second film, but we only have him in this one scene in this original film, and it's a really great kind of iconic performance. You know, he just steals the show just in this one scene.
Finally, General Zod, once trusted by this council, charged with maintaining the defense of the planet Krypton itself, chief architect of this intended revolution and author of this insidious plot to establish a new order amongst us, with himself as absolute ruler. You have heard the evidence. The decision of the council will now be heard.
Guilty. Guilty. Guilty.
The vote must be unanimous, Jor-El. It has therefore now become your decision. You alone will condemn us if you wish, and you alone will be held responsible by me. Join us. You have been known to disagree with the council before. Yours could become an important voice in the new order, second only to my own. I offer you a chance for greatness, Jor-El. Take it. Join us. You will bow down before me, Jor-El. I swear it. No matter that it takes an eternity, you will bow down before me. Both you, and then one day, your heirs!
Zod and his followers are of course sentenced to the Phantom Zone by Jor-El and the Council, and of course we get the triangular shaped prison of which there is no escape, a fate worse than death. And again, this is something else that's very kind of unique and original. It's very different to anything else, any other kind of prison or confinement in any other kind of sci-fi film. It's very different. I think it's different to the comics, or maybe it is like the comics, I'm not entirely sure, but there's the triangular shaped mirror kind of glass prison. Really cool, really striking, really different. Right at the beginning of the film here, the ignorant council doesn't believe Jor-El about the imminent destruction of Krypton. And I kind of like this. I like the fact that, the council, the Kryptonians are so kind of big-headed and arrogant, and they think they know exactly what's going on. They don't believe that anything could ever go wrong, and they just don't believe Jor-El. The sun is about to kind of just implode. It turns into like a red dwarf? Is it supernova? And of course that does end up actually happening, but also the crystalline structure of Krypton also catches my eye in that it comes to resemble the Fortress of Solitude that we see later, which I like that little connection there, which is, of course the Fortress of Solitude is made from a Kryptonian crystal. And then we have the kind of saying goodbye to baby Kal-El scene, and it really is a kind of beautifully poetic farewell. We get the kind of monologue there from Jor-El, and it really is this kind of godly operatic moment there.
You will travel far, my little Kal-El. But we will never leave you, even in the face of our death. The richness of our lives shall be yours. All that I have, all that I've learned, everything I feel, all this and more I bequeath you, my son. You will carry me inside you all the days of your life. You will make my strength your own. See my life through your eyes, as your life will be seen through mine. The Son becomes the Father, and the Father the Son. This is all I can send you. Kal-El.
And the stakes are really high as well, because the planet actually begins to explode as they're in the process of sending Kal away in the ship. So it's actually beginning to kind of all crumble around them before they've even sent him away to safety. And, of course, by sending their son away, they're not only saving his life, but they're also effectively condemning themselves to death, willingly. And I think it's a very powerful scene. Again, if any of you know anything about kind of the religious kind of connotations with Superman, it's kind of almost like a Jesus kind of thing, almost like a Moses kind of thing, where they're sending their son away from the kind of dying home world. They're sacrificing themselves to kind of save their son and give him a second chance, and as they're sending him away as their world is dying. Very powerful moment there. I love the fact that the film opens with this, kind of chronicling his backstory and his origin there on Krypton, but it also doesn't waste too much time. The destruction of Krypton as well is kind of pretty brutal and horrific. The shots of just countless people falling into an abyss, it is a pretty brutal and horrific kind of destruction there, just countless people just being wiped out as the kind of the world's just crumbling around them and exploding from the power of the kind of the sun there. And then of course we move away from Krypton as the film then moves to Clark's upbringing on Earth in Kansas with Jonathan and Martha Kent. We get Glenn Ford, I think it is, as Jonathan Kent, and I love the fact that, in this film Jonathan Kent wants Clark to actually use his powers and be a hero. He believes that he was sent here for a reason.
Yeah, I know. You can do all these amazing things, and sometimes you think that you will just go bust unless you can tell people about it, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, every time I get the football, I can make a touchdown.
That's for sure.
Every time.
Yeah.
I mean, is it showing off when somebody's doing the things he's capable of doing? Is
No.
a bird showing off when it flies?
No. No, now you listen to me. When you first came to us, we thought that people would come and take you away because when they found out, you know, the things you could do, and that worried us a lot. But then a man gets older and he thinks very differently and things get very clear. And there's one thing I do know, son, and that is you are here for a reason. I don't know whose reason, whatever the reason is, you know. Maybe it's because, I don't know. It's, but I do know one thing. It's not to score touchdowns. Huh?
Yeah. Thanks, Dad.
He wants him to be who he's meant to be, and I absolutely love that. And even though we only get really this one scene with Jonathan Kent before he dies, I think it still really works because it's a really kind of powerful, impactful scene. And of course we get the death of Jonathan Kent, and the fact that Jonathan dies from something as simple as a heart attack I think is much more powerful, because like Clark says at the funeral, everything I can do, all these powers, and I couldn't even save him, you know. And I think it's kind of really great how it, you know, puts Clark in that place where he thinks, you know, that he's got all these powers and can do all these things, and yet he's just powerless to save his dad from something as simple as, you know, heart failure. You know, I think it is really powerful. It shows us that despite all these extraordinary powers that he has and all these different things that he can do to save people, there's like nothing he can do, and he's absolutely powerless when it comes to saving someone from something like a heart attack. And I think it is a really powerful moment in the film and a real kind of turning point for Clark as well. And before I go on, I've also got to talk about the cinematography in this film. This film is absolutely stunning from a visual perspective. Just the look of the film. Of course, we got Krypton there in the beginning and the Kent farm. This is when it really kind of struck me and got my attention. Just these gorgeous kind of sweeping Americana shots of the kind of the cornfields and the Kent farm there. And it really is like a classic film. This just happens to be a superhero movie at the same time, and I think it's just really great. I love the look of this film. I think the cinematography is just really great. And also, something I have to mention is that the actor playing the young adult Clark Kent actually looks a lot like a young Christopher Reeve. It was only a small, minor thing, this, but it always bugs me in films when they have a younger actor playing kind of a younger version of the main guy, and it doesn't really look like the same person. But in this case, the younger guy playing the young version of Clark Kent, I think actually does look a lot like Christopher Reeve. And apparently from what I've heard, it's actually Christopher Reeve dubs over the guy as well, so it's actually Christopher Reeve's voice, which I didn't realise that was the case. It doesn't seem like his voice was dubbed over, but I do like the fact that it does actually look and of course sound like a young Christopher Reeve, and it does add a lot of believability to the film, that you buy into the fact this is a younger version of the kind of the Christopher Reeve Clark Kent that we meet later on in the film. And then of course we get the Fortress of Solitude, another epic moment in the film when the Fortress of Solitude is built, you know, from the crystal that Clark has, and of course the fact that the Fortress of Solitude looks like Krypton as well. And this of course is the moment when we have the kind of the scene where Clark meets his real father of Jor-El, and we get the ghost-like projection of Jor-El. It is very godlike. It is kind of this correlation to the Jesus and God relationship almost. Kind of, it really struck me the last time I rewatched this film, is that it is almost like a kind of Jesus God kind of thing, where kind of God sends Jesus down to earth to be the saviour of humanity. It is very kind of, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence, very similar to kind of Jor-El sending kind of Clark to earth to be the kind of saviour of humanity almost, kind of to kind of help them and lead them and guide them. It is very similar, but it's not kind of on the nose. I think, you know, it's subtle enough so that someone, a younger viewer maybe wouldn't pick up on it, but then as you get older you watch the film and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of kind of, you know, correlations there to kind of the Jesus and God relationship between Clark and Jor-El. The fact that Jor-El has actually got white hair as well, and he, obviously in a lot of the movies we get Superman in kind of like a crucifix kind of position. That probably is a little bit too on the nose, you know, for example in Man of Steel he's constantly kind of in that kind of Jesus-like pose. But I do love the fact that it has a lot of kind of similarities to the kind of to these kind of religious stories, even though it's sci-fi. I think it's I just love the whole dichotomy of it, where he's this alien from another world, but yet he gets kind of raised as a human being by these kind of religious parents. He kind of believes in God, and then they've got the kind of the godlike relationship with kind of Clark talking to his father of Jor-El, who's like this kind of godlike ghostly being. I absolutely love it. I think the scenes between him and Terrell, there's only like maybe one or two or just a few scenes between him and Terrell in the film, but I think they're all really great. The speeches by Terrell as well are very kind of poetic and operatic. Just they're grand yet intimate at the same time, and I think they're so great. That speech he gives Clark.
Always hold in your heart the pride of your special heritage. They can be a great people, Kal-El. They wish to be. They only lack the light to show the way. For this reason, above all, their capacity for good, I have sent them you, my only son.
I love it. It's just a monologue from an actor, but Marlon Brando delivers it so well. And it's such a great, just touching kind of operatic scene. I absolutely love it. And before I go any further, of course, I have to mention Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent and Superman. One of the most iconic portrayals of a superhero we've ever seen on the big screen. I mean, Christopher Reeve, he really embodies that character so incredibly well. Whenever he's there on screen, we're just like, that is Superman. Just like when we see Robert Downey Jr., for instance, as Iron Man, or Hugh Jackman as Wolverine. As soon as Christopher Reeve comes on screen, we're not thinking, oh, that's an actor. No, we're thinking, that is Superman. And I'm so glad they cast Christopher Reeve in the role, because at the time the film was being made, he was unknown, and they were thinking of getting someone more famous. Like, I think Robert Redford was even in discussion, I think. And in the end, they were like, no, if we want someone to really embody this character, and we want the audience to think, that guy is Superman, like, we just can't cast a famous actor. And I'm so glad they went with more of an unknown in Christopher Reeve, because not only was he an unknown actor at the time that nobody really knew, he also embodies that character so incredibly well. You see him, you're like, yep, that guy is Superman. And also, I absolutely love the duality of Clark Kent and Superman. Not every interpretation of Superman does this, but I love what they did in this film with that kind of dual personality and how he acts completely different when he's in his Clark Kent guise. And it makes perfect sense as well that he would act like a kind of bumbling fool. A lot of people kind of criticise this film because he's acting like just an idiot all the time, but I think it makes perfect sense because he would have to act like that in order to convince people that he's not Superman. And when you see him acting like this kind of bumbling fool, he's doing it because he doesn't want people to suspect that he's Superman. The whole purpose of the Clark Kent guise is to be the complete opposite of Superman. So when people see him as Clark Kent, they don't for 1 second even think, it never crosses their mind that he could potentially be Superman. He's like the last person anybody would think is Superman, even though he kind of looks kind of similar to him, because he acts and holds himself and speaks in just a completely different way to Superman. People just never suspect and put two and two together that he is Superman. I just absolutely love that. It makes it more convincing, because a lot of people kind of having a go at it for like, oh, he's just wearing glasses, some disguise. But you got to look past the glasses. The glasses are kind of like irrelevant. They're like the least important thing. It's like he's holding himself completely different. He's more hunched over. He's more kind of, he's more acting kind of more nervous. He's more unsociable. He's more kind of, socially awkward in a way. He talks different, He sounds a little bit more like a nerd, which is the complete opposite to Superman, who's really kind of strong and holding himself up, forthright, confident, authoritative. So I love the fact that, he can play both these kind of roles equally as well, and you just buy into the fact that he's completely different when he's Clark Kent to when he's Superman, and that people wouldn't suspect he is Superman. So for me, it really works. Clark pretending that in these scenes when he's at the Daily Planet, pretending that he's weak and feeble, for instance, hiding the fact that he has powers, I think is a great touch as well.
Jimmy Olsen, photographer.
Oh, hi, Clark Kent. Nice meeting you.
It's got everything. It's got sex, it's got violence, it's got the ethnic angle. I mean, look
Yeah,
at
so
it.
is a lady wrestler with a foreign accent. Ken, can you open this?
Oh, sure, Mr. White.
This could be the basis for a whole series of articles, Making Sense of Senseless Killing by Lois Lane. I mean, we get psychologists, we get psychologists, we get...
Lois, you're pushing a bunch of rinky-dink tabloid garbage. The Daily Planet has a petition.
I'm sorry.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shake it up like that.
Oh, well, of course not, Lois. I mean, why would anyone want to make a total stranger look like a fool?
I'll take that.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Mr. White.
And then Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor. I've got to talk about him. Again, this isn't something that everybody loves. Some people think, oh, maybe the villains are a bit too stupid and a bit too kind of silly and campy. And they are in a way, but I can give it a pass because this is like a 60s, 70s movie. It is kind of like kind of a classic Bond film, for instance, you know, and how the villains are handled. But for me, it works, you know. I think Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor is really great. He's kind of charismatic and funny as this kind of crazy, evil genius. And like I said, he could almost be a kind of Bond film from the 60s or something. A villain from a classic Bond film is really great. And the villains are campy and over the top, but I think it suits the tone of the film because, you know, it's not trying to be ultra serious, you know, it's charming and it's fun and it doesn't take itself too seriously, so I think it does really work. And coming off that, the humour as well really works in this film. You know, the moments of dramatic irony are great as well, where we kind of oh, any more at home like you? Not really, no. And if only you could fly. There's just so many great lines like that, where it's almost similar actually. It reminds me of the line from the original Raimi Spider-Man, where Aunt May's like, you're not Superman, you know. All these little kind of on the nose, kind of funny, kind of ironic lines, which are really funny, and I just love little touches like that because it is funny. There is a lot of humour in this movie, but it's humour that really works. Like I said, the dramatic irony there. I think I really like the humour in this film. And it shows that super movies don't have to take themselves ultra seriously, because it is serious in a way that it's a genuinely great film. You know, it's not a comedy, it's not a parody or anything, but at the same time, the dramatic moments are balanced out with these more comedic, light-hearted kind of comic relief moments, and I think it really works in that respect. I think Wonder Woman's going to do a similar kind of thing. I haven't seen Wonder Woman yet, but of course with Patty Jenkins citing Superman as a big inspiration, I think she's going to try and do the same kind of thing, where it's a real awesome, serious, dramatic film, but there's also a lot of fun and humour there, fish out of water comedy kind of stuff, where it doesn't take itself too seriously, and it's got some humour and some funny bits there as well, and I really like that. You know, some movies are just ultra dark and serious and dramatic, which I love, and then some movies are just really kind of crazy and silly and funny. But I love movies that have kind of that perfect balance there, where they're kind of dramatic and serious, but also got some funny, light-hearted moments at the same time. And I think the new Wonder Woman movie is going to do that, and of course the classic 1978 Superman walks that line perfectly. I think it works really well. And also I've got to talk about Superman's first scene. It is really great fun, very victorious and celebratory moment there. And also I have to mention the fact that it's almost an hour, or even maybe over an hour into the film, that we see Christopher Reeve in the Superman suit as Superman for the first time. And you think, that's a bit of a long wait, isn't it? Over an hour before we see him in the suit fighting crime as Superman. I mean, but it really works. And what I love so much about this movie, and again I think Wonder Woman's going to do a similar thing, where they take their time to kind of introduce us to these characters and explore their backstory and set up the world before getting into the kind of the action with the superhero that comes like halfway into the film. And I really like that, because it's a real great payoff then when it finally happens. We finally see them in the suit, in action, and it's even more rewarding than it would have been if we had it much earlier on in the film. And, you know, I don't think it's that long of a wait. I think it really works. Christopher Nolan actually did a similar thing in Batman Begins. I think a lot of people tend to forget, it's like an hour into that film before we see Christian Bale in the suit as Batman. And I love super movies that do this. You know, a lot of people don't love origin stories. I like to just get past the origin and get into the sequel. But I'm a sucker for real great superhero origin stories, and I think Superman the movie is one of the best, you know, right up there of course with Batman Begins, you know, where they take their time to explore the characters and delve deeper into the kind of the origin of the character, and get us kind of invested in the character's exploits first before then transitioning into the cool superhero action stuff, which comes like, you know, almost halfway into the film. And I think it really works. And, you know, go back onto this scene, Superman's first appearance, you know, I love the fact that it's a very victorious and celebratory moment. You know, everyone's clearly happy at the arrival of Superman, and people are smiling and cheering, which is, you know, it is, you know, I love Man of Steel, but it is kind of the complete opposite of Man of Steel, and I get the fact that they're very different films. Man of Steel is more of a darker, more realistic take of Superman in more of the modern world. But I just love the fact that, you know, people are happy and they're cheering, and it's a very fun, victorious moment with a superhero there, which I think is what it should be. You know, it's another thing I liked about Ant-Man. I mean, I'm not really comparing Ant-Man to Superman or anything, but with the Ant-Man movie that came out in 2015, it was such a breath of fresh air, because it was such a fun, joyous film. Like, it was a superhero movie where you could watch it and just have fun. It didn't take itself too seriously, and it was just such a fun movie. And Superman the movie is just the quintessential kind of pinnacle of that, where it's a super movie that is just so much fun to watch. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and you can actually enjoy yourself watching the superhero kind of being a hero, and it's just so great. Then of course we get the montage of Superman flying around the city fighting crime, and it is also great fun to watch, a great montage as well. And there's a big emphasis on Superman fighting crime as well, because we've been waiting like an hour, and then when we do get him as Superman, they go all the way into it. So we're seeing him as a hero flying around the city saving people, and we kind of see him interact with the criminals as well, and how he handles the situation with kind of charm and wit and humour. Again, Christopher Reeve comes into his own here. How he's kind of making these witty remarks at the criminals. Oh, hi there. Flying around stopping these criminals. It is, again, it puts a smile on your face. It is just great fun to watch. And unlike Man of Steel, there is a strong emphasis in this film on Superman actually saving people and helping society, which is kind of brushed over and ignored in Man of Steel, but it plays a prominent part in this film. And like I said at the beginning, again, I don't want to be comparing Man of Steel and Superman too much in this video, because they are very different films, and I do love Man of Steel, but what a real big difference is when you're rewatching this film. What really struck me is that kind of the viewpoints of Jonathan Kent and Jor-El are kind of almost the reverse of what they are in Man of Steel. They're kind of complete opposites really in that respect. In this film, it's Jonathan who wants Clark to embrace who he is, and it's Jor-El who is more wary, where it's kind of like the opposite of that in Man of Steel, which is interesting. And also going back onto these talks between Clark and Jor-El, they have kind of genuine heartfelt emotion as well, and I just love the scenes with Clark and Jor-El. I think they just really work, even though they're just few and far between. Whenever we do get a scene with Clark talking to his father, I think they're really powerful and really do work. And the scenes at the Daily Planet are also great fun to watch, seeing Clark interact with his co-workers, the humour of the situation, again, very natural humour with the fact that they want to know about Superman, and they're trying to find Superman, and then he's literally right there under their nose, which I think is very funny. And the relationship between Superman and Lois is also kind of believable and convincing. Other than the fact she, nor anyone else for that matter, kind of aren't more shocked at the fact that Superman is an alien and he has these powers and he's from another planet. That should be a little bit more shocking and surprising. I like the fact in Man of Steel, the big emphasis is on that, the fact that he's an alien from another world. It's kind of just brushed over and ignored. He's like, yes, I'm from the planet Krypton, and she's like, oh, that's kind of cool. He's like, wait, he just said he's an alien from another planet. You're not more shocked at that, but I can give it a pass. It's not what this film is focusing on really. It's all about him being kind of there as his hero, standing for America, truth, justice, and the American way, and I think it works. I like the fact that Man of Steel had more of an emphasis on that. It does kind of take me out of it for a second, because I'm like, how are you so chill at the fact that he just said he's an alien from the world? And then we get the flying scene with Superman, and again, it's very joyous and magical, and it's the perfect encapsulation of the joy of flying as well. Again, fantastical and fun. However, what doesn't make sense is the fact that when Lois is flying side by side with Superman, she's only holding on to him by his hand. At one point, they're holding on by fingertips, and I'm like, how is she not falling? I get the fact that Superman can fly and she's holding on to him, but she needs to be kind of holding on tightly to his body, and yet how is she not just dangling down when she's holding on to his fingertips? It makes no sense. Superman got some kind of anti-gravity kind of force field around him. It's like, it's a little thing, but every time I watch it, I'm like, how is she just magically floating there like a bird when she's only holding on to Superman by his fingertips? But anyway, a little thing, but it does kind of bug me a little bit. And another thing I have to mention is the kind of contrasting scenes of Lois with Superman and Lois with Clark, and I think they just work perfectly against one another and help to show why Lois would never think for 1 second that Clark and Superman are the same person, because we do get this scene with Lois and Superman immediately followed by a scene with Lois and Clark, but of course Lois is so caught up and in love and it just swept off her feet by Superman. She's not really paying attention to Clark at all, and of course you'd never, even if you're in that position, you'd never want the second think, oh, the bumbling kind of the fool reporter who's just knocking at the door, he must be Superman. You'd never think that for 1 second. What I mentioned earlier, of course, where Clark kind of completely holds himself in a very different way, and this scene is great. It's a little moment in this scene in particular that I've never really it's never really caught my attention before, but we actually see this in action. Lois is in the background, she's off, talking to Clark off screen, and we see the kind of the turmoil in Clark as he's thinking, should I tell her? Should I reveal myself? And there's a moment where he contemplates and he actually thinks, maybe I should. And we see him take his glasses off, and then suddenly he stands more upright, and he suddenly transforms in front of our very eyes. He suddenly looks like Superman. And then Lois comes back in, and he's all like, oh, flustered, and he's bumbling again, and he puts his glass back on, he hunches back over, and he's like, oh, I know. It's a real great moment. It's a very small, subtle moment there that could be missed. And as I said, I've missed it so many times. It's not until the last time I rewatched it, I caught it, and I was like, I just love little things like that. Love little touches like that, where it makes it so much more convincing that Clark Kent and Superman are very different people, where we actually see him before our very eyes transform kind of physically into Superman and then go right back into Clark Kent again. I think it's such a great moment there that I had to mention. And then we get Lex and his bad guys there. They're kind of plotting against Superman, and although I like the fact that Lex is curious as to kind of Superman's heritage, his home planet Krypton and where he came from, what kind of doesn't make sense, and I have to mention this, it doesn't make sense how he kind of somehow manages to work out that radioactive debris from Krypton will be lethal to Superman. I mean, how does he even know that? I don't know. Is there maybe there's some scientific reasoning, some way of knowing that kind of debris from Krypton would become radioactive and become lethal to Kryptonians, and he'd be able to use that against Superman? But again, it's a bit of a kind of having to suspend disbelief again, and just a bit of a jump of logic. But that's always kind of bugged me. I'm like, how the hell does Lex know that? We know that as an audience, that radioactive debris from his homeworld is lethal to Superman. Of course, kryptonite, is lethal to Superman. But how does Lex know that? I don't know. It's like, how could he possibly figure that out? How could he even guess that? But again, it is a very minor thing, so I can kind of let that slide. Another little thing that kind of bugs me a little bit is that although the scenes of Luthor interacting with his followers are funny and are obviously there for comedic effect, it doesn't make sense that an evil genius would kind of surround himself with such idiots, and it can at times get a little repetitive and tiring. But as I said, I think it does work, and it's not a big problem for me. Lex is the smartest guy in the room. It doesn't really make sense that he would surround himself with complete idiots and fools and morons, but I get the fact that it's there for comedic relief, and it doesn't bug me that much. It doesn't, it's not a real big problem for me. I think it does work. The way in which Lex Luthor, though, first communicates with Superman, I think is very clever and very different with how he kind of interacts with Superman and communicates to him through that kind of high frequency that only Superman can hear. That's very cool and different. I've never seen anything like that before. And, I think it's, highlights kind of Luthor's genius that he's able to communicate directly to Superman through this high frequency he knows only he will be able to hear, and dogs. But I love that he kind of communicates Superman directly and it lures Superman to his lair. And speaking of which, I love how Superman is so kind of cool and calm and collected when he's facing Lex's kind of preliminary threats against him. He's so unfazed. But at the same time, he has no idea what's coming. And then Lex Luthor's plan, I have to mention, his evil plan, although undeniably sinister, is kind of undercut by the fact that he wants to start up his own branded amusement park-like kind of country. It's like, okay, again, that's a big part of the comics with real estate and wanting to own this land, but I'm like, it's a very sinister, evil thing he's doing here and blowing up the country. But then he's like, he wants to start this kind of amusement park branded kind of estate. I don't know what's going on here, but his plan does, like I said, prove to be more impressive when we realise it was all just a trick to get Superman exposed to the kryptonite and weaken him. And I like the fact that although Superman stops one missile, he doesn't have the time to go back and stop the other one, because although he has all these extraordinary powers, he's not God. I like the fact that there's an emphasis on that he's got all these incredible powers, he can do all these incredible things, but he can't be everywhere at once. So he can stop one missile, but then he can't stop the other one. He doesn't have time to stop both at the same time. So I like the fact that they kind of put Superman in that predicament there and show that, he can't do everything. He can't be everywhere at once. However, I also like the fact that although he couldn't stop the second missile, he does do everything thereafter to prevent as many incidents and save as many people as he can from the aftermath of the kind of the destruction from the missile. He's then flying around trying to save as many people as he can. and stop as much kind of collateral damage as he can. And of course I have to mention the big moment at the end of the film here, which is of course the death of Lois and how Superman reacts to it both during and after. I think is very powerful and very effective. And again, it's another thing that if you've seen this film for the first time and didn't know that was coming, it would be so unexpected. You'd think he was going to save the day, save Lois, but I just love the fact that he's just so caught up with trying to save as many people as he can that he just doesn't have the time to save everyone. And he gets back there and he's just horrified to see that he was able to save so many people and stop so much destruction, but he didn't have time to get back and save Lois. And it's such a powerful, impactful moment because of course it harkens back to the scene of Jonathan Kent and the fact that he was essentially powerless to save him, and now he's put exactly back in that same place again when he was a kid, where he's powerless. He's just lost a loved one. There was nothing he could have done to save them. He was too late and he can't do anything now to bring them back. But again, this is another scene that some people have a problem with, but I don't, because I think it's very emotional, it's very powerful, and it really works for me. And like I said, calling back to that scene with the death of Jonathan Kent, he was powerless to save him. There wasn't anything he could do, but this time he's like, no. He puts his foot down, he's like, screw it, I'm not going to let her die, I'm going to do everything in my power to bring her back. I'm not going to let this happen again. I'm going to save her, I'm going to change this, I don't care, I'm going to do this. And it's such a great moment where the kind of, the flying around the world, it is not entirely accurate, this is sci-fi. I think it is a great moment and a great way of bringing the film to an end and bringing everything to a dramatic finale there, spinning the world around, reversing time, bringing Lois back. It is a really kind of powerful, dramatic, emotionally satisfying finale. He goes against Jor-El's will because he's like, no, I want to do this, I want to bring her back, I want to make up the kind of what I couldn't do in the past. I couldn't save, my dad, he died, but now this time, no, I'm gonna save her, I'm gonna bring her back. Jor-El's like telling him, no, you can't break the law, you can't do this. And then Superman's just doesn't care, he's got this free will, and he's like, no, I'm gonna do what I want to do, I'm gonna bring her back. And I think it's a real great moment there. And of course, wrapping this up now with the final moment in the film, we get the kind of iconic looking and smiling into the camera. And again, this is something that people might not love, might bug them a little bit, breaking the fourth wall. But for me, I think him just looking there, winking at the audience, smiling at the camera, it really is just the perfect way they could have wrapped the film up. I think it was a really great ending there. And with that pretty much wraps up my scene-by-scene breakdown and discussion of the classic 1978 original Superman movie. And yeah, again, like Alien, Superman, I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite movies of all time, but I think it hands down is definitely one of the best superhero films we've ever had. It came out almost 40 years now, and the fact that it still holds up and you can still watch it and enjoy it as a legitimately great film, let alone great superhero movie as well. Yes, you can point at it and say, oh, it's a little cheesy and it's a little corny, and some people do put it down for saying that, it doesn't hold up maybe, or it is a little cheesy and corny. And it kind of is in parts, but that doesn't bug me because there is some kind of cheesy, silly, funny moments, but I like those moments, I think they work, and for the most part, it is kind of a serious film in that it's taking the source material seriously, and it's a legitimately great Superman movie, and I think it's probably still the best Superman movie. As much as I love Man of Steel, I love how that was a very different kind of Superman movie. It was more of a sci-fi, alien invasion, first contact take on the Superman mythology, and I love the fact that they went in a very different direction. I love Man of Steel for that, the fact that it wasn't trying to be like anything else we'd seen before. It was a very different representation of the character. But as far as just like the archetypal definitive take on Superman, I think Superman 1978, hands down, is the best. I love this film. I think it is rewatchable. There are some little hokey, cheesy moments that might bug people and take them out of the film, but for me, those moments aren't a detriment to the film. It's not as if the whole film is just a comedy or anything. It's not. As I said, I think it is a legitimately great genre film that just so happens to be also the very first superhero movie, and it was a very big risk. I didn't know whether this was going to pull off. It got some big talent involved in the film, like, of course, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, Terence Stamp, but I think it was a risk that paid off, and similar to how the Avengers for the modern day was a real big risk. It was unprecedented. They didn't know if it was going to work, and it really paid off big time. I think it's a similar thing actually with Superman in the 70s, that, you know, they didn't know if it was going to work or not, and it was a real success. Everyone loved it, and people still love it and cherish it to this day, and I think deservedly so, because it is a really great film. And one last thing, a lot of people kind of bash on the original Superman movies and the kind of the super films from back in the day, saying that they are kind of really cheesy, you know, of their time. I don't think that's the case, because if you look at the 70s in general, that's a decade of film. There's a lot of very kind of violent, serious, dramatic, kind of noir films, almost like Taxi Driver and that kind of thing. So Superman really is the odd one out. It really wasn't of its time. It wasn't kind of like the other films at the time that were kind of trying to be more gritty and more serious and more dramatic and intense. Superman was actually the odd one out. It was doing something very different. It was a lot more fun and just lighthearted and fantastical and uplifting and inspirational. And I think that's exactly what a superhero movie should be. And I love the fact that, you know, they didn't try to make a superhero movie like a lot of the other kind of darker, more genre films that were coming out. They did a Superman movie that was true to the character and true to the source material. And I think Richard Donner did a great job. I absolutely love the original Superman movie. And that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on the classic 1978 Superman movie. But what do you guys think? What do you think of the original 1978 Superman film? Please let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to have a discussion, and as I said, I think it's a really great film. Not one of my personal favourite films of all time, but it is definitely one of my favourite kind of super movies. I'll put it in the top 5. I think it's a fantastic film, a film that still holds up 40 years later. It's a really great, uplifting, inspirational, fun, joyous, fantastic super movie, and I absolutely love it. So there we go, Superman the movie. And there we have it, guys. That wraps up my thoughts on Superman in this latest instalment of Deconstructing a Classic. It was a lot of fun going in depth on the original Superman movie and talking about it in depth and detail, various different scenes that I like and what I think makes this movie so great. The fact that it was the very first of its kind, the first true mainstream superhero movie to kind of take the source material seriously. We had the iconic portrayal of Superman from Christopher Reeve. So many things that worked so well and came together to make such a great cinematic experience, and yeah, I think it's so good. So that pretty much wraps up my thoughts, bringing this to an end now. Of course, I'm really looking forward to Wonder Woman. I'm hoping this is going to be like the first DC movie to bring everyone on board, that were critics, audiences, fans, everyone will love. But it certainly looks that way. I'm loving the fact that it's also kind of harkening back to the original Superman, and Patty Jenkins kind of citing that as a big influence on her and a big inspiration on the movie. And also the next installment in Deconstructing a Classic will hopefully be of the original 68 Planet of the Apes. That's right, before War for the Planet of the Apes comes out in July, I'm hoping to do another Deconstructing a Classic on the classic 1968 Planet of the Apes. And aside from, you know, Superman and Alien, I love them. I think they're fantastic films, but with Planet of the Apes, it's not only a great film, it's also one of my personal favourite movies of all time. So I'm really looking forward to doing that video. I'm really kind of delving deep into and exploring that film, because I absolutely love it. It was one of my favourite movies as a kid, and it's still to this day one of my favourite films of all time. So I cannot wait to talk more in depth of the original Planet of the Apes before War comes out in July. And that pretty much brings this video to a close. Like I said, please let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, what you think of the original Superman. And also, if you haven't already, be sure to click subscribe to see more. And as I said, if you missed my last Deconstructing a Classic on the original 1979 Alien, be sure to go ahead and watch that. That was a lot of fun talking about the original Alien before Covenant came out. And like I said, hopefully the next one in this series will be on the original Planet of the Apes in July. But with that said, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.